Then now I will look for agenda approval.
So approved.
Got motion, any second? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed the same. All right, no other action items, study session. We got to you there, John, come on up. 4.1 is Minnesota statewide longitudinal educational data systems, better known as SLEDs. John and Mary Jo.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for having us here. Talking through some of the data today, there's going to be different data sources that we talk about, so I'll start out by explaining those as we go through. My name's John Double, Mary Jo, just in case. All right. Oh. I'm probably too far away. Thanks. So out of the district goals, we'll be looking at the second one, is where a lot of this information fits in with the engaging the community in conversations about high school curricular redesign. And just looking at this data, the data always helps us as we look to re-examine those things. All right. SLEDs, what does it stand for? Common question. I needed to figure that out myself as well. Statewide Longitudinal Education Data System. Longitudinal meaning is taking a look at those long data pieces. This goes back all the way to 2006 is when this was put into place. We'll be looking at data from 2010 to 2017. It takes data from 3 different sources and puts them into one place where we can access them better. So we've got the Minnesota Department of Ed, Office of Higher Learning, or Higher Education, as well as the Department of Employment and Economic Development. And we'll work through a lot of those as we go. So first year, we're going to take a look at our graduates. So this is kind of where our folks have gone following their high school year. Where did they go the fall after that? 65% of our students went on to a college somewhere. 27.5% went straight into employment. And it's kind of interesting to see the breakdown there, who stayed in state, who went out of state. Again, these are averages of 2010 through 2017. The second line on there, and this will be consistent through the slides I'm doing, has the regional data. So you can see how that looks in the southeast region. That's from here to Winona up to Red Wing, and then kind of whirvy-curvy on the way back down here again. And then the state of Minnesota at the bottom. So when we take a look at that data and we break down just the extremes, so the first year to the last year, in 2010, 50% of our students enrolled in a Minnesota college, but that change dropped 11% into 2017. Employment went up 11%. So one of those interesting pieces you can examine is that our students shifted more toward going directly into employment than they did in enrolling in a Minnesota college. Outstate college stayed the same over that time period, for those 2 years. Yep.
Quick question, is that at the onset, is that for the first year after they graduate, or is that like first and fifth year or anything?
It's the fall after they've graduated. Straight fall. One time, where did they go?
So when it's talking about enrolled in Minnesota college, that includes like tech?
Yes. Yep. Minnesota State System. Any college or any higher learning institution, whether it's community college, university, 4-year college, all of those. Okay. Certificate program. So when you break that down even further, let's take a look at our 65% that went on to some sort of a college. Here's where that breaks out. So 31%, way over on the right side, went to outside Minnesota somewhere, which was higher than the state average. The other one that is a neat one to take a look at is our 2-year statistics. Minnesota 2 years at 35, almost 36%, which is significantly higher than the state average. Our Minnesota public 4-year is lower. You can see that as well than the state average. Comparing that to the region, though, we're a little bit closer in things, especially when it looks at that outstate Minnesota. Lots of competition from Wisconsin and Iowa with being closer. So when we take a look at our persistence, so now our students have been in there in the first year, what happens after that? So the persistence piece is taking a look at those same students, and now we're in 2010 to 2015, so we can have that full 4 years in there. Who came back for another year? So in the second year, almost 85% of them returned to college to continue their second year. That drops to 74% almost in their third year, down to almost 65% in their fourth year. And you can see how those numbers sister up pretty well with both the region as well as the state as far as the retention value in that. When we wonder about our degrees, on the next slide there you can see on the far right side, all degrees earned, Alberta area schools were above the state, below the region, but at 55 and 2/3 percentage there. A big piece on this slide is to take a look at the bachelor degree box for Alberta area schools. Under 35% of our students from 2010 to 2012 earned a bachelor's degree. And that's fairly well in line when you look at the region being under 40 as well as the state of Minnesota. We were significantly above folks when it comes to the associate degree, however. Almost 5 points or 5 points above the state. And we're also leading in the certificate area. So some neat things to see there.
Could I just ask, okay,
Yep.
so this is the highest, so I was just gonna
This
ask
is-
if somebody had an associate's and then went for a bachelor's, so that would not be reflected in the associate, it would just be reflected in the
It's-
bachelor's. Okay.
Right, it's whatever their highest degree was. Yep. Okay. Could be. Could also be when we get to the jobs and stuff that we'll see here in a little while as well. When we take a look at the other 27% that entered the workforce right away following school, there were 3 employment industries that came up as significant. Trade, transportation, and utilities, almost 28%. That does not include manufacturing. So it's just the trade, transportation, and utilities. I thought that was kind of odd myself, but the way they split things up didn't have manufacturing in there. Manufacturing is listed by itself. Leisure and hospitality came in second there, but also had over 27%. And the new one on the radar is the education and healthcare coming in at 19%, which makes sense, bringing that in. Doing the math, that's only about 75% of the students. Out of all the other categories of industry, that's where the other 25 are. They just didn't come up as a significant number for the state to report it out.
They're in like the trades, transportation, or utilities.
Mhm.
That doesn't show then in the associate degree or others, because some of them will be, those individuals will be actually getting a degree or
It could for the degrees, for all degrees, because if they did go back later to get it, it has an 8-year window for them to get those degrees. However, it would have shown, it will not overlap with who entered which in the fall after their graduation. They wouldn't have shown up as a college student in the first number.
So this is just showing the fall after their graduation, the kids who did not go to college of any sort, what they're doing for work, the top industries.
Yes.
On the previous slides, they were different dates. Is that because of how long they give for the cohorts? Is that-
The window for the data. In order to have the 4-year college numbers, we had to go back. The newest data out is 2017. For that 8-year window, we had to go back to 2012.
And do you have the number for manufacturing?
I did not report a number as it wasn't significant enough for them to actually have a number in that box. United States Census data. We've got the census coming around again this year, so the estimate that they're using is their 2018 5-year estimate. So this is the one that you'll see some information on. This is taking a look at our residents 25 years and older and what their education level is. So you'll notice I've got a couple there in yellow. So in the city of Albert Lea, those of us with high school graduates or higher levels of education, 87%. That's everyone that's 25 or older as they reported it to the Census Bureau. When you're looking at the bachelor's degree or higher, that's on there at 16.5%. The next column, go back just a second. Unduplicated, yes. And then you've got Freeborn County in the next column, so you can compare to how the county looks with the state on the far right. They're fairly consistent between ourselves and the county. However, when you look at the state, definitely at the bachelor's degree, a significant difference.
And I suppose if you think about this, it's not necessarily people who grew up here. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, you know, they could be people who moved to Albertley because this is the best place for them, given their skills and talents and educational level too, right?
Right. There could be a lot of different reasons, so.
Right.
It just takes a snapshot of who's actually here. Mhm. This takes those same numbers and compares them, the counties around us as well. So you'll see Faribault to our west, Mauer to our east, Steele to the north, and how they compare in those two yellow lines. One thing I will point out, if you take a look at the bachelor's degree, all 4 counties fall below the state average on that.
Which could be corresponding to the kind of employment opportunities.
Absolutely.
in the county,
Absolutely.
surrounding counties.
Absolutely. That kind of gives a little bit of a snapshot of who's actually residing here as well. Trying to see what else. Oh, there we go. This one talks about our folks that are employed that are 16 years and older. Where are they working? So as you can see on this one, City of Albert Lea again is on the left, Freeborn County in the middle, State of Minnesota on the right. On this slide, manufacturing comes up as a major employer, 22.7%. If we go to the next slide, we'll find our education and healthcare services at 23.2% as the 2 largest sectors in our area. It's also a little interesting to see the difference between the city data versus the county data. A little bit of a change.
Do you have any thoughts about why manufacturing was one of our largest employers, but then our graduates going into manufacturing were not reportable at a low number?
In some cases, it also would depend on their level of education needed to get into those. If it's required to have a 2-year certification to be able to operate machines, they would be showing up as a college student if they went into that in the fall versus going into the employment. Okay.
All right. So John really did the historical, as you can see, back to 2010 graduates, and the reality of the numbers to now we're going to talk about the Minnesota Student Survey results. And this survey is given every 3 years to 5th, 8th, 9th, and 11th graders. And it was given last year in the district, so Maggie would have taken it as an 11th grader. And it's 50 questions, and it really has lots of different questions of school choices, where do kids think they're doing after adulthood, employment, et cetera, health and well-being. So a lot of different topics. And all the 4 agencies listed there with the Minnesota Department of Education, Health, Human Services, Public Safety, they work together to put the survey together to really have an understanding on where are kids at these days in Minnesota, what are their beliefs, their perceptions, et cetera. So to align with that second board goal that John mentioned at the start, I pulled some of the questions, or we pulled some of the questions together to show, John showed the reality, here's what kids are thinking. So we'll just get started with that. So one of the questions, and I put the questions up there so you can see them directly on what students are being asked. And this question is on school plans. What is the main thing you plan to do right after high school? And so 5th graders were not asked that question, so they're not listed. But you can see 8th grade, 9th, and 11th there. And they also break it down by male and female. And so what do we do as a district is we look at that data to say, is the reality matching the perception? And right away, you know, it's probably standing out to you that, all right, when we look at 11th graders, 3 out of 4 students plan on going to a 4-year school. Yet the reality is about 35% actually complete a 4-year school. So those are the things that we work on to say, we know that we need to be educating more parents, more students, the community of two-year schools or technical schools, because that's a great path for many, many kids. But you can see all the numbers there.
Another way of putting this, and again, this is kind of where the whole pathways piece evolved a number of years ago. When I came to the district, we were pretty traditional high school in Albert Lea, and that was we are going to prepare our kids for college because that's what we do. And our reality is, 1 in 3 may go on to go get a 4-year college degree, and we have a lot of other needs within our community. So I think a challenge for us as a school district and as a community is having the critical conversations with folks about the future of options for their son or daughter in school, as opposed to everybody. 73% of our junior girls are going on to a 4-year college, when the statistics show us something completely different than that. So I think that's one of our challenges as a district, as a community, is really how do we get that message out? And we're going to be, after we present this to you tonight, we're going to be meeting later this week to talk about how we can start to bring out some of this information with social media and some other methods so that folks are aware, and so that we can really start to have those conversations at an earlier grade, so that and part of it is getting through the stigma of not necessarily having a 4-year college degree, because I think there is a stigma attached to that, that we want our kids to do this. But I think the numbers here that you are seeing tonight paint a completely different picture of reality than what most folks are thinking.
I think the manufacturing and the trades in this area are starting to understand that, just through some of the different meetings, they're talking more that, hey, why don't you look at these options? You can make a very good living in a community this size, and it might be a 2-year degree, or it might be a trade certification, but those are where the needs are, and the more students can start matching up and seeing that coordination with it, they're going to recognize that maybe where they're at, they can make a great living and still not have to go to college for 4 years, and there's good options no matter how you look at it.
I think that the whole career readiness stuff and all that stuff, like at the middle school level, is great. My son went from wanting to be a lawyer to realizing that's not a good idea for him, and now he wants to work at Hormel. And it's just, those are completely opposite things. And I'm like, well, maybe both of them, whatever is a good fit for you. But I honestly, as a parent, don't know other ideas. You know what I mean? Like, well, okay, that's a good idea. But what about this or this? Or maybe a 2-year, something in the middle would be a good fit for you too. But then I blank out on an idea. So I think that the kids are learning what they need to for option, or that's at least starting to happen at a young age, and I think that's great. But I think us parents are lacking, so any support and help we can get with ideas, because I think, I'm like, okay, thank goodness for the next career fair, and he'll get some more ideas, or maybe Hormel is what he wants to do, and that can be a really good job too. But I blank out. So yes, I would like any help I can get.
And John, do you have a career expo coming up at Southwest next week?
Yes, at Southwest, on the 14th, we've got our annual career fair, second annual fair. Mr. Dibble and I worked on that to put it together. We've got 36 presenters coming this year, so just about every space that he allowed will be filled with somebody. And so the students will get to attend 3 different presentations at that point. Every career field and every career cluster is covered by the presenters coming in. So literally something for everyone if they've marked their interest down.
Are they are they more centered around certification 2-year degrees, or are they centered around 4-year degrees, or which direction?
We have the whole gambit, everything from working right out of school all the way to professional degrees.
Just a couple comments about this. First, the perception is obviously still at this point that everyone wants to do that 4-year degree. Where does the disconnect happen? Is it called reality at graduation? Is it called reality you're 18 years old and you earn your way? Which again, we're in southern Minnesota is different than the Twin Cities. And the other comment I got on there was I was just wondering why do they ask the same questions in 8th and 9th grade when we do it every 3 years? And I don't see 5th grade listed here. Is that more of a baseline, 5th grade?
Yeah, some of the questions have 5th grade, and, that would be a good question maybe to add down the year, is we do need to start younger. But I think also just Angie's comments about educating parents as well of getting a 2-year degree, Kim, at Riverland, but 2-year degrees, there's so much value and the jobs available and the job shortages. So it's a whole community effort. It's education on many levels.
Right, but if I think I asked everyone at the table, I bet you we're all 4-year degree or more, right? Is that correct? Not saying that's right. I'm just saying that when we look at perception and then as we go, do we start them earlier at what point and what do we ask them? Over in Europe, by the time they're 12 or 13 years of age, they pretty much have their career they're going into, and it could be manufacturing, it could be teaching, it could be a sail builder, which again would be manufacturing. That's not America yet. Probably should be.
Yeah, someone questioned how early do you start tracking that? But yeah, Europe does start sooner. But any more questions or observations on that last slide? Okay.
Just 8th and 9th grade. Why do they ask them at the same time? It's not an every 3-year deal to go from 8th to 9th grade.
I don't know that.
It may look,
Middle school?
I'm not 100% sure because I don't know the data itself, but we do it in 5th, 8th, 9th, and 11th. So I'm wondering if they needed the 8th to get 3 years after 5th.
Or middle school?
They do it every
Not sure.
3 years, okay?
Yeah.
They pick out those 4 grades for whatever reason and survey those 4 grades every 3 years. So I don't know why. Maybe it's the 5th to match 8th and the 9th to match, but then that wouldn't match 11th. I don't know.
That's why I wondered. 9th is why I was going. 5, 8, 11 seems like pretty. Anyway, okay.
This was another question that we found interesting as we looked at the numbers, just enrichment activities in general. And the question was, during a typical week, how often do you participate in sports teams, such as Park and Rec, school teams, in-house teams, or traveling teams? And so the numbers, vary by the grades, but, almost half the students aren't participating in some type of sporting thing. And the reason I bring this up is I know Paul Durbin, as the athletic director, has really started reaching out and figuring out how do we reach more kids in school, and the use of success coaches and other staff to really help kids get more involved, because we know involved kids are productive kids. So that's just general data that you can look at there.
Yeah, I talk to Paul daily, and we discussed this at the conference a couple weeks ago too. I'm pretty convinced that one of the main reasons that we have, that any school has low participation activities is because some kids flat out can't afford it. If we could do something to alleviate that factor, it's quite a barrier, and you have to put down quite a few bucks up front to be involved in an activity. It's overwhelming for a lot of kids. And when I was the head wrestling coach, some of my favorite team members were kids that were just out there casual. They weren't attempting to be a state champion or anything. They just wanted to be involved in something, and I really appreciated that. But you don't get that kind of a kid because of the investment they have to make. I mean, it's not something that you do casually anymore.
Right.
I
Well-
think it indirectly correlates with the economy in Ellerly, the free and reduced. You'll hear students a lot of times say, well, I need to work. I have to have a job to earn some income so I can put gas money in and I think sometimes, and I just know from when my kids were in school, they're getting that from the parents sometimes, but that's a cultural shift that we somehow have to get into, because I'm guessing that percentage has been pretty close for quite a long time.
Yeah, there wasn't much change between the prior 3 years. Also heard from a success coach, and he said has been talking to some families of this culture and just said, sometimes it's educating with the parents too, and what more communication can we do? Because, some families, and kudos to them, want their children home at 5 o'clock for supper because they believe in that. Well, practices, games, that's not going to happen. So that's what Paul's been working on is like, let's get some parent meetings of the different cultures so we can discuss and see if we can figure out some things. So good discussions.
Do we know how these numbers compare to the state numbers?
I did not put the state on this one, no. I could go online and get it. So I do have the link to this. So when I send that to you, we get our numbers, but I would think online at MDE. Maybe not.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because I went to this workshop at the convention, and I was just looking through the little handout that they gave us to see if there were any state numbers, and it says there's something called OST activities, so that's out of school time activities. Is that what we're talking about here, or is that more? Because it says more than 6 out of 10 Minnesota students reported high engagement in OST activities, which means 2 or 3 or 3 or more days in a typical week. So if that is the same thing, then we're sadly behind that, but I don't know if it is.
I need to check on that. So we can pull up any school individually by going to the Minnesota Student Survey site at MDE. And honestly, now that you say that, I'm thinking, I don't know that I've seen a state average there, but
The data we have is Albert Lee specific, but you could probably research that.
this is for sure
Yes.
Albert Lee, yeah.
But I mean, the report we got is Albert Lee specific, and I'm looking for it right now, Jill. I'll let you know if I see it.
Just another one I pulled was just general health conditions to see how students describe this. The question was, how would you describe your general health? And, fortunately, the majority of students said good, very good, or excellent. But obviously, some fair and then poor. And so it makes me think of, all right, we do summer food programs, the weekend backpack programs with the churches. Are there other things? And social workers are really more in tune to seeing some of the needs and supports we can do for families. But just wanted you to see, generally, students are feeling pretty good about their health, but
This could be skewed if someone, it's like cold or flu season and you're like, oh, I don't have good general health. You know what I mean? Especially like that 5th grade, 8th grade population. You get the sniffles. Yeah, my health stinks today. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just wonder with kids how that could be skewed based on how they've been feeling that exact day or that week.
Yeah, that could be pretty fluid. One thing they did say at the workshop was that they do scrub the data for, like if somebody said they always are doing everything, they scrub those out, or they never do anything. So they do their best to make the data as accurate as possible, but of course there will usually be some questionable. And I just came across, I guess, another breakdown of that other question that I was asking, if we go back to the sports team. So I see there was a question about sports teams, and for some reason the snapshot that they gave us said 2016, so I don't know if it really is 2016 that they gave us, or if that's a typo and it was this last year, but in any event, it says, students report their participation in each activity outside of the regular school day during a typical week. So grade 5 had 59% participating, grade 8 had 62, grade 9 had 58, and grade 11 had 51 participating.
So similar to what Dennis said, that we are lower.
But would
Yeah.
we add all of ours up? So we would actually be higher than that, maybe. Because we would add once or twice and 3 to 5 and 10 or more. That's what it appears to be to me.
Do they define general when they say general health?
That was I tried giving you the exact question so you can see what kids had to decide to put. And there is, when you see the whole survey, you know, there's a lot more questions. I just picked out the standout ones that really align to what we're talking about, because I didn't think you wanted to be here till 11 o'clock tonight, so. But I knew one that, you know, is on everybody's mind, and we're talking about it a lot, both nationally and here, is vaping. So this was a question that kids were asked regarding, it was under the category of tobacco use. The exact question was, during the last 30 days, on how many days did you vape or use an e-cigarette? And as you go, and again, 5th graders were not surveyed on that question, but as you go across, it's hard to see, but it's yellow. I've put the changes from 3 years ago. So let's take 11th grade. The female population, 72% are saying they do not vape. In 2016, that was 80%. So it dropped down, but then you can see what increased was now they're doing it, the numbers are increasing on those students who are doing it more frequently. So if you go to the bottom, all 30 days, somebody who's doing it every 30 days, this year it's 10%. 3 years ago, it was 1%. So it jumped up 9%. So those are the concerns. I know Jill and I were at the same meeting on ATOD, and when we talked about tobacco use, vaping, and what all the community agencies, you know, and discussions on how do we address, how do we lower those numbers, because it is concerning. Next one is interesting. I just thought you might be interested in this. Is so students are vaping. Where are they getting their Juuls, e-cigarettes, etc.? So this was pretty interesting. That the highest data, I guess maybe not surprising, but is from friends, internet, and then family members. I don't know, Maggie or Aaron, do you have any comments on
I remember taking this, and the first person who asked that question was like, they can't ask us that. And the teacher's like, well, it's anonymous, so just answer honestly. And if it was an honest survey, the numbers would be a lot higher. And yeah, friends and siblings, a lot of the time, especially for younger ones, are huge. Like the family members, that's big, especially with the 21 law now. Like they'll get like friends that are in college and stuff in different towns that'll get it from. So yeah, it's definitely not honest numbers, and it would be astronomically higher if it was honest, which is hard to swallow.
I would agree with that from everything I'm hearing. And they also said at the workshop that there's a little bit of stigma that seems to come because they said that the bad kids take longer to complete the survey. Like the good kids were done earlier. So if you're there having to check, you know, how much time you're doing everything, I don't know if everybody's really accurately reporting, and it's a self-report.
All right. Any other comments, or we'll move? Okay. And of course, just want to see where students' perception is with bullying. So So the question was, during the last 30 days, have other students at school, these are the students who answered never, so this time we do have 5th grade in there. But the question was, have they spread mean lies about you, threatened to beat you up, make sexual jokes, comments, or gestures towards you, or excluded you from friends, other students, or activities? And so we looked at that data to, talk about in buildings, where we at, what do we need to be working on, watching for, improving, et cetera. Dr. Funk's comment today as we were looking at it was that exclusion from girls, when you look each grade, that's concerning. Exclusion, isolation. The one I didn't put up here, there really wasn't much data to see, but the question following this was, do you do this? Do you do this to others? Do you do this? And 99% said no. So that tells us, okay, we got work on accountability, responsibility, what is harassment or bullying, and so just interesting.
Looks concerning to me is 65% for the females on the whole, the sexual jokes and stuff, I mean. It's just, we can't catch it. I mean, I don't know how to fix it, but that's pretty alarming.
And then the males are at 93. The females are 65, males are 93.
And the other interesting piece is males do not feel excluded like girls. I mean, it's just different on how people interact. Girls feel 64%, all right, say that, no, they've never been excluded. Well, that's 36% who say they have in the last 30 days. And you only get 9% of boys saying that. I mean, it's just...
That can be a cultural and social economic situation as well, because some social economic classes may threaten to beat up, whereas other social economical classes, they're the ones that are excluding or doing the other things. They're just different ways that work for their class and might kind of go more under the radar.
So that's what we pulled out of the student survey, is kind of a highlight to bring the perspective of what John has done with SLEDs, as well as some of the other topics that we talked throughout the year. Again, the whole report is on the Minnesota Student Survey site, but I will send you the link in the board report.
The other thing that's mentioned in this report that we haven't touched base on tonight, and the district administrative team is looking at this, is there's something on ACEs within here, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And one of the discussions we had in the meeting this morning is, where's the district at as far as trauma-informed schools, and what are we doing to work with kids on mental health issues? So what we will be hearing sometime in the next month or two, probably at a study session, and we're going to recommend that we give an update to the board on what's happening with ACEs and where we're at as a district on some of these issues.
And when will we be receiving the Tiger Pride survey results?
Tiger Pride survey.
The one that we do here.
Those are, I think that must be Family Services Collaborative.
Yeah, she talked about it at ATOD, and I don't remember when she said she'd get those to us. Okay. Yeah, I can give her a call too, or, yeah. These are just all the resources that we use. But.
So I just think, I asked John and Mary Jo to put this information together because I think it helps provide us a better data on, as we're moving forward as a district, how to align our systems to best meet the needs of our students and really our community. And so I think that this is really crucial that we all understand, we've always heard okay, here's kind of what I hear. Well, John has done a tremendous job of going through and looking at data from different databases that you know, align to give us a real good snapshot of where we are as a school district. And Mark can't be here tonight. He's got high school conferences going on, but we certainly will be sharing this information with him as we're looking at
Feel supported or don't feel supported. I jotted down some of my notes there, that 37% felt they had an adult who cared about them, and half, 8th and 9th graders, didn't feel like they had somebody that they could talk to about a problem. So I think those are some numbers to pick out as well, to see what we can do to provide a more, just even as a community, a more warm and supportive environment for our students.
Are you talking Albert Lee students there, Jill?
No, those were state.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some interesting data there. It is good, like Dr. Funk said, to get some of our ideas and where the realignments are and perceptions are, and it's good to see. I mean, with we asked the kids, let's feed the information back to us. So, all right, thank you.
I just wanted to comment quick too. There's significant amount of work that is happening at the state level around SLEDs and CTS, career technical programs and education, and I think that the support that Albert Lee High School or Albert Lee schools can give to, and it doesn't have to be Riverland. It's just that platform of education. I think it's important that any opportunity, and we've done some of this with partnering on some grants, but any time we can work together with our higher ed agencies and high schools and community partners to provide that, I think then what you'll see is a shift in the community, which we've started to see already, about the importance of those career and technical education fields. And I'm excited for the transformation that's happening in just a short amount of time. So I think there'll be great things to see as we move forward with that.
I think it's still interesting to see the perceptions of the kids, even up through 11th grade level, with the employment opportunities we have in our area, either on the career and technical or just the manufacturing jobs, that they're still got some thoughts or maybe their goals or whatever you want to call it, dreams of that 4-year degree, when, you know, that's not necessarily maybe what they're hearing about either at home. So, good. Thank you, guys. Just wanted to mention our next regular board meeting will be Tuesday, February 18th, here at 5 o'clock. Thank you for coming tonight and waiting on me for a minute or two. Meeting's adjourned.